Okay. Hi, I'm so happy to be here and with you. It's been a long couple of years, so it's nice to be together. And thank you all for a beautiful, beautiful conference. All right. So if you all were to ask my husband, who is perhaps, those of you who know him can probably attest to it, the most gentle and loving and sweet man on the planet, what his favorite part about me is, I'm pretty sure that he'd tell you it's my passion. Because I feel everything just 1,000%. I'm always all in. And if you were to ask that same husband, still the most gentle and kind human being I know, what his least favorite part of me is, I'm pretty sure he'd tell you it's my passion. It makes being married to me a little bit hard, I'm sure, sometimes. But it is because I feel everything in such a big way. In fact, my friends often call me the bazooka. Because if there is a problem or some sort of trouble to figure out, like I never go for the pocket knife or the switchblade. Like I just go straight for the bazooka and I blow everything up. And so I will say I'm working on it, but I want you to know that your speaker is just asking forgiveness from the get-go, because I don't really come from a lot of things from a very neutral position. Okay? And especially not about our topic today. In fact, I would say that our topic today is one of the things I'm most passionate about in this world. Building relationships, and especially relationships that transform. Did you all get a workbook? Okay. If you didn't, somebody's got them, or there's some up here. Help yourself. And I'm also really laid back. If you have to get up and go, if you have a question, shoot your hand up. Don't bother being formal with me. Okay. So in building relationships, one of the most passionate areas of building relationships that I am always thinking about is especially with the young people that we serve. And I know you are as well. Our young people are navigating so much craziness, right? And helping them through that craziness, well, let me tell you, I'm super passionate about that. They need a ton of support working through all that is going on around them. Because today is weird, right? I mean, we're in a really wild time. We've been talking about it at every meal. We all know exactly what's going on. But there are a lot of considerations that we as youth workers have to navigate that we've never had to navigate before. In fact, no one who's come before us had to navigate what we're navigating, and probably no one in history, if we're going to be honest about it. And I will tell you, I am not a doom and gloom kind of gal. And in fact, I get really fatigued when people are super Debbie Downer. I don't have a whole lot of time for that. But it's a lot that's happening. And I have to tell you that I am certain beyond the shadow of a doubt that Satan is after our kids. He hates them. And he loves nothing more than to turn their world upside down and prey on them. In fact, we hear in Scripture, 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He's coming after these kids to devour them hard right now. And listen, we all know what's happening out there, but I'm going to go ahead and name it so that we all are on the same page. We've got it. Epstein and Maxwell and the Ukraine and Russia and China, and we've got the virus, we've got trafficking, we've got all sorts of pedophilia, which no matter which way we slice it is abounding. The entertainment industry, which I myself spent almost 20 years working in, is a hot mess, right? So much confusion, propaganda. People fighting for the right to kill their own babies. Delta, Omicron, now the new one. Like we have a new one now? Okay. Vaccine policies that so many people don't agree on. And a culture that no matter what we wish were true, is really active in helping our kids to hate themselves and each other. And the product of that is so much anxiety and fear. When you think about that, it is no wonder that the U.S. Surgeon General announced just 6 weeks ago an immediate advisory on the youth mental health crisis in this country. He claimed, and I quote, more than 1 in 3 students report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 1 in 3 as of 6 weeks ago. And our Orthodox kids are not exempt. And I know I don't even have to tell you this because you know this. I mean, we get calls from youth workers all the time asking for help, resources, contacts, clinicians. At the beginning of 2018, our team at Faith Tree had heard about directly, and if you want to know how we actually log these numbers, I'm happy to tell you that offline, but we had heard about 7 Orthodox young people who had either tried to take their own life or had been successful in it. Right? Not kids on the periphery, mind you. These were kids in church, Goya kids, Soyo kids, camp kids. At the end of 2018, that very same year, the number had jumped to 18 young people. As of last week, I was sitting at my dinner table with my family and I got a call that again, another active Orthodox young person had either tried to or successfully taken their own life. The number was 63. Yesterday, between my flights from Phoenix to Pittsburgh, the number moved to 64. 64. Gosh, I sound really doom and gloom, right? But here is the great news. The great news is that's not the end of the story. Because our God is also passionate, so passionate, and He passionately loves our children. And the thing that He's put between all that crazy that I just described and them is us. You and me. God has uniquely positioned us to stand with locked arms on the front lines, right? So that we can nurture and protect and steward these young people that He's entrusted to our care. And if we truly believe that God is sovereign and still on His throne, which we do, then we must acknowledge that He put us here right now in our respective capacities, whatever they are, and that we have been ordained for such a time as this, for this secular, postmodern, post-Christian, anti-Christian moment. It is on us, you guys. And I have to tell you, I can't imagine anything that would make me more passionate. So, how do we do that? How do we steward these precious young people that He's entrusted to us, really when it's this nutty time in history? Well, I think we have to acknowledge that it seems even more daunting because a lot of us don't feel like we have it all together. I certainly don't, right? And now we have to pour into our youth. How are we going to do that? Well, I believe it comes right down to the topic that I've been asked to speak about today, which is relationships. It is all about building relationships, one kid at a time, and it's about creating spaces that really facilitate that relationship building. Faith Tree Resources that Father David mentioned, which is an organization that I have the honor of working with, we're really all about building relationships. That's what we care about. With God, with our pastors, with each other. And we believe when they're done right, they happen in the local community. Which I know that seems even like daunting right now too, right? How do we build local relationships when, you know, all the game rules have changed? So we have to deal with like virtual gatherings, right? So that makes it a little tricky, or mandates and vax requirements, or, you know, I don't know about you all, in California, we deal with parents who are so scared, or they're not scared at all. So trying to find the balance is tricky. And we have to incorporate so many like external forces, especially those of you who run camps, right? We have directives from the bishops and directives from the county and directives from the states and directives from all the places, right? There's like 10,000 entities that have input on how we function. And there's still sports on Sundays. Like that didn't go away, right? And all the other things that were here in like 2019 prior. So how do we build meaningful relationships with all of that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, because it is doable. It is doable. It is. It's not easy. Don't hear me say that. But we didn't sign up for easy. None of us. We signed up to build relationships that transform. We signed up to share the holy gospel of Jesus Christ and to use everything in us to pour into the next generation of image bearers. And so we will press on. And I'm so excited because this weekend we're going to do it together, which is always so much more fun. So, let me tell you the plan for today. Today we're just going to go on a little journey. We'll start wherever we are currently in our youth ministry relationships with our young people. And then together we're going to create a little roadmap. And so your packet will walk you through a bunch of content, and we'll do a lot of exercises and things. Please know that for all of us, where we're starting is very different. So for some of us, we may already have like extraordinary relationships with the young people that we serve. We know them. They know us. We have regular interactions together. And that's great. That's awesome. That means we have a strong starting place. And there's a launch pad from which to grow. For others of us, we may not be there yet. We may just be starting in our roles. We may have kids that we serve that we've never even met. Is there anybody here who hasn't met the kids that they serve? Yeah, there's a lot of us. We may have kids that don't participate very often, or let's call it straight, there may be some that we're excited when they don't participate because they're super irritating, right? You can call it straight, it's okay. But if we're being really honest with ourselves, there is a variety of a spectrum of those that we serve. And if you are amongst those that don't know your kids or are just starting in a position, that's actually awesome too, because there's so many places to start and grow. I would bet, though, for most of us, we're somewhere a mix of the two, somewhere in the middle. So kind of somewhere between, I'm pretty sure I'm the most significant person in that child's life, down to, wait, what's that kid's name again? Great. So where you are isn't important at all. What I'm interested in is that when we leave here today, we'll have grown further towards our destination of building those transformative relationships when we're done. Does that sound okay? Okay, let me just quickly give you a qualifier. There's something I want to say to you before we actually jump in. I think it's important for you to know that I don't have all the answers to the questions I'm going to pose today. In fact, I probably don't have many of them. Outside of the junior high school Sunday school class that I'm teaching right now, and the 4 kids at home that call me mom and their friends and cousins, I haven't been on the front lines for a really long time. Okay, it's been a while since I've actually been on the ground leading young people. So I won't have all the answers. But the good news is you do. And so because you are the frontliners and the boots on the ground, I'm really excited to share some thoughts and considerations. But for the most part, I want you to share with me and each other what's working, what's not working, problems that you're facing, and maybe how you triage them. Okay, so that means that during our time together, we're going to have a bunch of exercises and a bunch of opportunity for discussion, and then the chance to share best practices and swap good ideas. And my prayer is that, again, we'll both leave with plan, because they need us. 64 is too many, y'all. And I think we can all confidently say that we are vulnerable for that number to grow. So let's lock our arms and let's get ready to do it. Anybody have questions before we jump in? Anybody? All right, let's go. In your workbook, you will see, where's my workbook? Okay. The first stop as we begin to draw our little roadmap is on page 3 of your workbook. And we've entitled it, How to Identify Where You're Going. In other words, let's define specifically our destination. Because if I'm standing here at this podium and I'm telling you, I want to go there, where's there? Is it like to the road to sit next to the Maddoxes? Is it out the door? Is it to the bathroom? Is it to Minnesota? We could just say there. We don't know where we're going. So I'm going to propose that in keeping with our topic for today, I'm going to tell you where the there is that I'm using in this example, okay? Our destination is to create youth ministry environments that help build transformative relationships. I'll say that again. Our goal is to create youth ministry environments that help us build transformative relationships. Can we agree on that? Anybody disagree on that? Okay. That's what we're setting out to do. So, with that stop number 1 on our map, we want to create youth ministry environments that facilitate building transformative relationships. An obvious question is, what is a transformative relationship? Who can take a shot at it? Somebody tell me, what's a transformative relationship? Come on, do it, Father. Tell me.
It's a relationship that somehow brings us in contact with Christ, and therefore allowing us to transform into individual levels.
I love it. Did everyone hear that? Say it just a little louder, Father. I was going to try and say it back, but it was too good. I don't want to mess it up.
Well, and I don't think I can say it.
That's good.
It's a relationship that brings us into contact with Christ in a way that allows us to live in Him and be transformed into what He creates us to be.
I love it. Okay, I'm not above bribing people to listen to me and pay attention. So can you please hand Father some foam putty? Just pass that right back up to him. It's terrible parenting, but I'm totally willing to do it in a speech. So I'll just bribe you all. This bag is full of so many goodies. The more you talk, the more you participate, the more you get. Okay. Anyone else? Tell me about how you would define a transformative relationship. Yeah. A relationship that changes you. Great. I'm going to give you, how about How about, can I throw them? Will you guys catch them if I throw them and pass them up? You get some birthday candles. Father, it's coming your way. Thank you. All right. It's going to get kind of cumbersome. There you go. Here's how Google describes and defines transformative. Transformative is an adjective, and it means causing a marked change in someone or something. I like that. Causing a marked change in someone or something. All right, I'm just going to jump in there. Let's see how Google defines relationship. Relationship, it tells us, is a noun. That means the state of being connected. The state of being connected. So if we as leaders in the church have the goal to build relationships, or rather, to be connected with our young people in such a way that it promotes a marked change, the obvious next question we have to ask ourselves is, what is that change? And like Father said, it's pretty comprehensive, it's important, and we've got to acknowledge we're here, we're going there. Where is there? I like to say that no matter what the specifics of our youth ministry programs are, or whatever environment that we teach in, the change we are looking for to encourage, and Father, I'm going to make it a tiny bit more succinct, but we want them to be holy. Which is essentially another way of saying that they're more like Jesus, right? That's our end game. That they are more like Him and in deeper union with Him. And be sure, for all of our young people, it's going to look way different. Some of our kids are already highly engaged. They are active in the life of the church. They are in pursuit. Some of our kids are infrequent visitors. They may not know anything about the faith, and actually, they may not be interested even a little bit. But the goal of a transformative relationship with us is to support and encourage that marked change of going from wherever their starting place is to the end game of being more like Jesus Christ. So let me ask you, let's get concrete. What would that look like? If our young people were becoming more like Jesus Christ, what would that look like? I have swag, people. Come on, here. Let's see. Whoever answers next gets this really fun Minnie Mouse poof. Come on, Father. Answer something. Tell me.
A less self-absorbed peacefulness.
I really like that. Less self-absorbed peacefulness. We're so self-absorbed.
My wife.
Yes, your daughter. There you go. She'll like it. Very good. Okay, who else? Come on, give me something. Yes, sir.
Creating a space in their life for Christ.
Great. Tell me what you mean by that.
Being intentional about their faith.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, let's give you, I don't know, here, look at this thing. You can wrap a package. I'm going to throw it. Here we go. John, you're sitting in a really unsafe position. I'll try hard, okay? Anybody else? Anybody else? John, tell me.
Complete person.
A complete person. Okay, tell me what you mean by that.
So the less that we are like Christ, the more incomplete or subhuman that we are. So the more that we are like Christ, the more
human
that we become.
Okay, great. Lemon blueberry donuts. I think they're candles. I don't know. Here you go. Excellent. What about praying more? Jesus was a praying man. We want them to be praying more, worshiping more. What else? Forgiving more, serving more, being in community, being others focused, right? That's a huge one because we cannot be like Jesus Christ and not be others focused, right? Even on the cross. So he was being mocked and beaten and scourged and spit on. He was still thinking about everybody else. Father, forgive him. Anything else? Yes, Holly.
Anything would actually stay not my will, but thine be done.
Not my will, but thine be done. Excellent. Here, there's some balloons. Sorry, thank you. Send that up to her. Okay. Very good. Well, believe it or not, that was stop one. Easy, right? Easy peasy. So just to recap, we said our first stop on the map is to identify where we're going. We said that where we're going for all of us is to create youth ministry environments that facilitate transformative relationships. We agreed that the transformation was to be more like Christ. And so if you turn to page 4 in your workbook, the next stop is we identified where we're going. Now we have to identify where we are, right? We can't figure out how to go there if we have not started by saying, where is here? Okay? Like when I wanted to book my travel to come here this weekend. If I didn't know I was starting in Los Angeles, it wouldn't be very useful, because how I get here from Los Angeles is very different than how I would get here from New York. And in the same way, if we want to build thriving youth ministry environments that allow for our young people to draw closer to us, to each other, to our clergy, to Christ himself, then we have to know what parts of our ministry best facilitate that, as well as identifying what blockers are prohibiting that. Does that make sense? Okay, so to help us understand, we're going to do an exercise that basically has 4 questions that we're going to answer, okay? And if you turn page 5, you'll see an exercise that's called, you guessed it, the 4 questions. So before you jump in, I just want to tell you a little bit about it, okay? And, you know, Father David, you mentioned Dave Ramsey, which it's a really interesting organization that does a lot of like content about biblically based finances, and we've had the pleasure to work with them actually now several times a year. We end up in Nashville and have learned quite a bit, so this is totally stolen from them. But what you'll see on this page is 4 columns marked what is working, what is confusing, what is missing, and what is broken. And we're going to take 10 minutes to fill out these categories, so that's 2.5 minutes per column. But here's what I want you to think about. When you look at the working column, that first column, I want you to write down everything in your ministry that's working, especially in regard to how you build relationships with your youth. It could be anything. But the key is, what do you want to amplify? And in fact, you can write the word amplify next to that first column. In the next column, I want you to write down everything that's confusing. What is lacking clarity in your ministry and not making sense or seems kind of uncertain and you just don't really know how to talk about it in any area of your ministry, but especially as it pertains to how you build relationships with your youth? Okay, so next to that confusing column, you can write needs clarity. Next, list out if anything's missing. Is something not there that should be? Is there something that should be happening and it's not? What would you add? So write add in that column. And lastly, is there anything that's just downright broken? What things need repair? So write repair. Okay? Maybe it's channels of communication. Maybe it's a team of, co-laborers in ministry because you're at it alone. Maybe it's money or other resources. Whatever it is, I want you to dump all the things, okay? And here's the challenge. I want you to push really hard. Okay, so for 10 minutes, exactly 10 minutes, I don't want you to stop writing, because you'll see after you empty, there's more in there. So keep emptying, 2.5 minutes per column, okay? Write it all down and challenge yourself to really empty your tank. All right, when we come back together, we'll chat about it. You have 2.5 more minutes or so, so about one more column's worth. All right, 1 minute, everyone. There it is. All right. Who is going to be brave and share something that they discovered? In fact, let's start with working. Did anybody discover anything in this exercise that's working really well and you want to amplify in your ministry? Yes. Hi, Shireen. Is that you? I get to see you in person. Nice to meet you.
One thing, we have 2 different locations for our church. One thing that works really well is despite having 2 different locations, we have a very tight-knit group of kids. Somehow they manage to stay tight-knit.
Go between. Excellent.
Despite being in 2 locations, and I want to figure out ways to keep that.
Keep them close. That's good. Excellent. And so because of that good answer, you get metallic alphabet beads. I don't know what they are. Will you pass that to Steve? Pass that to her. Pass that to her. Excellent. Who else? Anybody else identify something that's working? Yes, Monica.
So being a Southerner, we don't have to fight that Christ exists.
Nice. It's a good one.
It's everyone prays before everything, and they do it in school, they do it at church. So that's something we have going for us being the Bible.
That's excellent. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's actually a really big advantage. I mean, coming from California, that's not our scenario at all. So that's good. And to celebrate that good answer, I'm giving you a box of Eagle Claw mini tackle kit in case you fish. So send that back up to her. Listen, we at Faith Tree bring out the big guns. We want you to be happy. So there you go. Who else? Anybody else? Yes. What's your name?
My name is Leanne. I'm from Sacramento, California.
Oh, hi. There's my West Coast buddy. Nice to meet you, Leanne.
So I'll just throw out there, I'm very new to this. I just started working in September, so I'm new to youth directing. But I'd say one thing, I was going to piggyback on what you were saying, like the tight-knit group, because coming in like with the high schoolers, they're very tight-knit, like all the girls are, you know, they hang out on the weekends, they're very tight-knit. And one thing I found that works is just letting like them know that their voices are, letting them speak. Like letting them like have start the conversation and be heard. Because I don't think like I've had like 2 years where you're on Zoom and all that, like they didn't feel like they were being heard like at school or their teachers or whatever. Just like, you know, having that environment for them to like talk about like their faith and like where their struggles are with that through all of this.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And actually, we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. But to celebrate, I'm going to give you I don't actually know what this is. I kind of feel like it's a bath bomb. Winter Wonderland. Oh yeah, foaming bath bomb. Send that up to Leanne. Okay, last one. Anybody else see anything that's working? Yes, sir. Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
So camps.
The camps work for you, so that's something to amplify.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Oh yes, and here, we will give you some, also lemon blueberry. I'm going to throw it, but I'm kind of afraid. Sorry, Father. Nice, good job. Okay, let's move on. Does anybody identify anything that's confusing? Yes, Panos.
So, working on the metropolis, so the one thing that can be confusing is all the programs we do, are they, or rather how are they, impacting the kids' connection with their local parish and engaging in the sacramental life of the church?
That is a great question. I'm just going to pause there for a second. And in fact, I'm going to give you our big giveaway because that's a really important one. And so this is for you. Okay? That's excellent. This is a fanny pack, fun pack for your bike. So if you pass that. But it's a really important point that you make, Panos, because I know, John, I'm fired because I keep walking out. I'm sorry, John. I'm going to go back here in front of this camera. We really, I do think, have to pay particular attention. And actually, Father Stephen had a great conversation with me several weeks ago that really called to our team's attention the need to figure out that balance, because we don't want to become, I think you used the term, Father, event-based theological hubs, which is really hard. Camp was a significant part of my spiritual life. That is what tied me to the church, right? But we also know the importance of building a local community. And in fact, that's one of the things at Faith Tree that we're most passionate about, is really seeing thriving local communities. So finding that balance, right? All are important. What we're doing here is important. Retreats are important. Camps are important. But finding the balance to tie our young people back to the local community around the local altar table is a really important piece that we have to keep plugging through. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Okay, anybody else with confusing? Yes, tell me, Matushka.
Choosing the right person to talk about the hot topics.
Wait, let me think about that. Choosing the right person. Okay, why is that confusing?
Because the right person isn't always in front of you. Sometimes they're further away and it takes more steps
to get to them. That's a great one. That's really great. And it's daunting. It's really daunting. We're also going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'll just go ahead and preface it by saying it's getting a little bit harder because many of us don't know how to talk about some of the hot topics. Okay, but we will talk about that. All right, let's keep moving. Oh, no, I have to give you a thing. Here, these, I won't hurt you. See, I'm going to throw this to John. These are bags that you can put some Valentine stuff in. John, you're a trooper. Okay, thank you, John. What about, let me give you one thing. I see a note here that I skipped over. One of the terms that we use all the time in our work at Faith Tree is clarity is kindness. Clarity is kindness. And I think it's important to kind of pound that one home, because when it comes to communicating with young people or their parents or our pastors or our hierarchs, like for me, clarity means use less words. I'm super verbose. But it's a kindness that we show, because the clearer we are, the less ambiguity, the less places for, the vision to be kind of not only ambiguous, but that we're not all headed to the same there. Okay. What about missing? Anybody find anything that's just completely lacking and not happening in your ministry? Yes. What did you find, Father? Oh, is that a hi? Or you have an answer? Yes.
I just want to get up there. She can't see me. Continuity between programs.
It's huge, huge.
From camp context, so we spend a lot of time preparing for and doing the program. A lot of people say big part of why they stay in the church when they spoke a second ago. But that's, a week, 2 weeks every summer, maybe a long weekend in the winter. And the whole rest of the year, what do they hear in their local church? Is there continuity between what happens in camp and what happens in Sunday school, what happens in their youth group meetings? It would be great if we could all be working together to carry a similar message across all of those things, so each individual effort reinforces the other.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm going to give you a plate. And it's Pioneer Woman. Ooh, that's fancy, right? There you go. I didn't want to throw it at you. I got a little too nervous about her. So, excellent. Anybody else have something that's missing? Yes, tell me. Tell me your name.
Alexandra.
Hi, Alexandra.
Parent buy-in. So a lot of our parents send their kids to camps or retreats thinking it's a cultural event instead of a spiritual event. And I don't think they quite understand what their kids are being exposed to, what they're learning. And over the years, what I find is very cyclical. You know, the kids will attend all the way through college, then they won't come back until they have kids. But again, it's more of they go for the fun, they go for the culture, they go for that, but they don't really know what their kid is learning there. So I think that we have greater numbers if the parents knew what we were doing, what kind of work we were doing, instead of just thinking culture piece.
That's a great one. Does anyone else experience that? Parent buy-in? Yes? Yeah, I know we do, even in my own home parish. I'm going to throw these pens at you because they're super cute, but I don't want to hurt anyone. Nice job. Anybody else? Do we have anything? Yes? Yes. I can't even, oh yes, Bishop Andre.
Right. And from my own more experience and as a spiritual father at camp, confession is just one of the most beautiful experiences at camp. The kids getting that confession of working most camp, hopefully. But at the same flip side, during confession, when you hear the spiritual father, Christ is missing as a person. It's always the concept, idea of, oh, Christ is there, this is what the church tells us, this and that. I struggle to see in the teenagers that come to camp to confess a strong desire to know Christ as a person. They don't know. They struggle with that. And I think it's very, very important for us as priests and as youth ministers to not forget to plug in Christ as a person. I don't know how we'll be able to do that throughout our youth ministry work, but it has to be constant and recurring in everything we do. And, I don't know if it makes sense, but it's just, to me, that's one of the things that I struggle with. I see it as something that we should have and just get better at. I don't know if you all have the same thing, but I just see it.
Well, I'm going to deviate for...
Be a mythical character.
That's right.
And be real in their life.
So I'm going to deviate from what's here for 1 second, and let's answer that. Does anyone have any response to how do we make Christ real as a person outside of being a mythical character? And I'm excited because I like Plato. I'm not going to throw it to you because that makes me super scared. So I'm going to throw it to you. Will you give it to him? I mean, if I hit a bishop with Plato, I'm sure it would not be good. Thank you. Thank you, Santa. Anybody have any comments? Yes, Leanna.
Could be a first in Orthodox history.
Yeah, well, here. You know what? I actually have to give you one too, Santa, because you said something. So I'm going to give you some Plato too. One more for Bishop Metropolitan Gregory. Thank you. Okay, Leanna, yes.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off that, I think like how Christ is missing is, I think we've lost the concept of like church in the home. And I think like that's where it stems from. Like if you go back to like, you know, like, so I'm Greek, and if I go back to like my grandparents and stuff, I always hear my mom talk about how like her yaya would always just like talk about like, you know, the faith and Christ at home. So she learned so much because, you know, growing up with my parents did, you know, Sunday school and boy and stuff, they were there, but they weren't just like, they weren't so much of a thing that they did like our generation does. It was more like, you know, you go to church and then that's it. And so she talks about how like her grandparents would always talk about church, and church is in the home. And I think that's what we're missing is like parents will drop their kids off at Goya or drop them off at Sunday school and they might not even come to church with them. They go, oh, go sit with Nana or go sit with Yaya, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But then at home it's like, you know, do you pray at night or do you pray before you eat or do you talk about like who's your saint or like how do you build that? Do you have an icon corner where, you know like, okay, there's my saint, you know. And I think it comes from that, because if it's instilled like in your home, then you'll take it out to the world and you'll use that, and you'll You'll emulate Christ, and yeah.
That's good. Okay, thing. Here, can somebody else be in charge of the things? They're too cumbersome. Here, here's the thing. Yes.
I don't know, you have such a good arm.
I have a good arm. Here, I'm giving you for whatever you're about to say, this, and then you can have an 8-pack of crowns, and somebody else can have balloons. Father David, you're in charge. I'm just going to give you the things. We don't want them to be a cumbersome thing. Yes. What were you going to tell us?
I think
Speak up. Sir.
the thing that's inherent to all of us, no matter your age, is being able to recognize Christ. And to do that, you have to know who he is. So I think helping our young people first understand who he is, and he tells us very clearly, I am. So I think first of all, helping them recognize who he is, and then recognizing him around them. That he is in, we so easily say, Christ is sitting next to you, but do we understand what that means? And I think because, that's how God made us, that we're so sensory, that we experience him through his creation. So, with you taking us through understanding relationships, I think is why it's so crucial. Why I feel like the synergy with relationship, because we experience him, we understand him through relationship, through community, sacramentally, but also human. And when you started earlier saying we live in this post-whatever world, it's true. We live in a world that doesn't look at being, right? We swipe left. But to know Christ is to know your fellow human being. So I feel like this whole conversation stays back to what we're doing today. We have to know who he is and then recognize him in our life, which might be in the person next to us. It might be through the grace of the Holy Spirit. But I think that's where we're missing the mark a lot, because they don't know who he is. They know his eminence, they know the mythical too.
Yeah. Excellent. Yes. Father, Shireen.
I was going to say, so it needs to be incorporated into the mission statement of the Untitled Chapter. And I like what was being said that we can't individual character, Chris individual character, and that has to start from the preschool of, when you're teaching them this is a curious word or how this is not like your other books, this is God interacting with. From a practical perspective, whenever you're doing whatever that someone can or that, what are the elements, and like the perspective is fantastic. But one thing that I always remember that sticks out to me from the priest with the circumstances, I was taught how to do, we always had to do it at a quiet time. They gave us like a quiet time sheet about sitting in silence and connecting with God and then doing journaling. And that kind of taught me to connect with the living God and have that relationship. And at first it was awkward because I didn't know what I was doing. It seemed like it was pretend. But then you get to this practice more really real for you. So incorporating that into the experience of going into the experience of the curriculum of the schedule. I think it just started that mystery for that camp. But I think it should be something that's important. And that's one practical that works for
Excellent. Thank you. I'm keeping these down here. If you answer, just come get them, because I'm afraid now I'm going to hurt people. You're great. Here you go. Father, yes.
So I think,
Thank you, my friend.
quote my neighbor, Father, that we live in a very materialistic society. Totally forgot what the spiritual. Materialistic, not in the consumer sense, but materialistic in the sense that our spiritual sensory organ forgets there's a God. And so we get a headache, we take Advil, we get sick, we go to the hospital. Our first instinct is not, I'm psychosomatic, let me ask God to heal us, and then take Advil. I love David Attenborough. Everyone knows his tries to get him to say that he's an atheist, but he keeps saying he's an agnostic. And when pressed on this, he says, I was once out in the field and they cut the top of a termite nest, just removed it, we were looking down. And I realized that the termites had no idea we were there. They didn't have the sensory organs to know we were there. So what gives me the arrogance to say that I know that there's no God? And I think that our society has, just in the same way that animals look at caves lose their ability to see, I think our souls are losing the ability to just remember that God is ever present. And the more that everyone else's answer meets that, and the more that we do it at home, the more that we learn about it, the more that we experience it in church, then our soul starts to see again.
I like that. I like that. And we're super distracted, right? So it's even hard to sit. And you get a Hot Wheels car. Nice. All right. Yes. Tell me. You guys are awesome. Thank you, by the way. You are a great crew. Tell me, what do you think? Yes.
So it seems like mostly everyone here is pointing to it starts at home. But we, as youth leaders, need to also understand that not everybody has the same upbringing. I mean, my family alone, my mom grew up in a communist country, so her experience towards our faith actually scares her. You know, she ran away from the priest. Whereas my dad's side, he had it ingrained in him, even though they were going through communism, his family held strong to our beliefs. So a lot of kids, they first of all don't know why they come to these events, especially when their parents take them. It's not until they're older that they realize the concept of God. But as youth leaders, I think that we need to be that example of Christ in their lives. So you mentioned earlier, like some people have that close relationship with the people that they are working for, like the kids, the youth, the population, whereas others might be really exposed to it. And we as leaders, we need to be that example. We need to show them what it is like to pray, how to pray. We need to teach them and never assume that they already know, that they've been exposed, because a lot of the times they might not have. So I think the kind of target of it all is just don't make assumptions, try to build that relationship with them to understand where they're coming from, and then lean on that. But be that example, be that person that goes to church, that sees them and acknowledges them and goes with them, approaches them as opposed to waiting to be approached. So it kind of starts with us as well.
I love it. I love it. Anybody else? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to take two more and then I'm going to keep us moving. Yes, and then yes. Go for it.
So I have really similar background with church, like we're the same part of the world. And my family and parents were also in communism. And I feel like when we immigrated in Canada, most of the people and youth of my age started by going to church because they were like Christian kids from Christian families, and slowly they started to fade away, making new friends who were Romanian also, which were not really as Christian as them, and starting to slowly fade away. And I feel like what's really hard for us is the presence, because we might have youth of our age and especially younger, but older than 20, 21, it's extremely hard to bring them to the TVs. And it could be related to, communism made people be afraid of church and God and everything. It was kind of forbidden in some way, from what I understood. And I feel like some of my Romanian friends only go to church because their family forced them, but never really understood why. And from other people they hear, in my country it is bad, it used to be really bad, with communism, and kind of start being afraid, of course.
I think that's probably across, not even just Romanian or people who have come out of communism, but in lots of places. Sometimes I show up and I'm like not 100% there. I'm like, right? It's just to go. Yeah. Tell me.
Let me just add something.
You sure?
So also because of communism, before people coming in Canada, but during communism, no one was arriving. So the few who left the country just before the communism started are now second and third generation.
Yes.
So now it's really first generation in our churches.
In your churches?
And the one who left, I guess Romania, started their own group in Canada, and they sometimes hardly associate with our groups, and that's also really hard because I'm trying to get them to come with us. They're second, third generation. They don't fluently speak Romanian or might understand it, but they have different tradition because they didn't fully live the experience, and that's also what I realized. It's hard for them to come and fully live and understand the experience with God and the faith.
That's great. And we're going to actually touch on that in just the next section, but about how relationship building and intimacy with other people, right? How we can actually help move that needle forward. So we will touch on that. Yes, last one, and then we're going to move on to what's broken.
I think giving them actual opportunities to be like Christ, like tangible things they can do, acts of servitude. I think like there's nothing, for me more beautiful than watching a group of teenagers like make sandwiches for the homeless, while fellowshipping with each other. So just getting outside of themselves and serving others in that way. I know my kids come home, from opportunities like that, exhilarated, and, there's just something, that changes you.
I love it. I love it. That's great. And I'm just going to throw out one myself, which we'll talk about more. You're like, what's coming? We'll keep talking about more. But prayer is a really, really, really big one. If we would like to build our own relationship with Jesus Christ, with each other, we have to help cultivate in our young people the daily discipline of prayer. Okay, lastly and quickly, because now I'm blowing my time and I'm going to get busted when it's lunchtime. But did anybody find anything that was broken? Yes, Father.
Silence.
Silence? That's a great one. I love that.
Twofold. Number one, finding time for silence in our lives so that we can sit still, but also when to be silent.
When to be silent. Tell me what you mean, Father.
So, you said sometimes we don't have the answer, and sometimes it means that we don't need to try to connect it. We just be silent. I was just reading something that I don't remember where I was reading. Actually, I do remember now. There's a book, and they're talking about, or even just a way in which we answer, maybe not even silence. Sometimes give the simplest of answers and not be verbose. Because Basil the Great, sometimes Gregory, the theologian, his friend Gregory, would be frustrated that he wouldn't use the word homoousios in his discussions and things like that. And he would get very frustrated. And then he realized it was probably the better course because sometimes you just have to be silent so that you didn't blame everybody so that you can continue the conversation another time.
I love it.
Our own time for silence.
I love it. I'm going to actually, so on your last page, we have, or one of the last pages, we have resource list, and we're excited. There were a couple links that I referred to, stats, the Murthy stat, the Surgeon General stuff. But I'm keeping a running list, and we're going to do a roundhouse at the end to share resources. But I'm keeping also some of the things as we go. So the David Attenborough one, we just put down that YouTube video, Father. But one of the things for Silence, Father Joel, that I think has been supremely helpful for me personally is a book, not by an Orthodox author, but by some Protestant pastor in Oregon. His name is John Mark Comer, and the book is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I will highly recommend it. I've probably read it, 8 or 9 times in the last few years, because it talks about the importance of living and practicing the way of Jesus. So if we want to be like him, we actually have to live like him, which means silence. It means Sabbath. It means we have to develop our prayer life and grow in that discipline. So that is a resource you may want to add. Anybody else? What is broken? Yes, Panos.
There's oftentimes, I think, an attitude of someone else will do it.
Ooh.
I think if you look at our conference, right, there's parishioners are waiting for the priest to act. The priest has to do so much that he needs support from the parishioners and or the diocese metropolis looking for the people, the priests to take the lead on things. It's this, I don't want to say blame game, but always waiting on someone else. And I think we have an issue with initiative.
An issue with initiative?
Yeah.
That's a really great way to say it. An issue with initiative. I like that language. That's good. And I think that is across all different efforts and ministry work in the church. That's really hard. Yes. Leanna?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Monica, you'll be right after her.
Okay.
Okay.
I think another thing that's broken, not to blame like COVID and everything, but that's kind of like where we're at right now in our world. And it's the whole concept of coming to church. And it's so easy for Like, so I was talking to Father James the other day, and he kind of said, like, it's the whole, like, you have a slipper idea, where it's like, well, if I miss our local parish, I can go to the West Coast, the Midwest, I can go to Greece, I can go, anywhere online where they're live streaming. And it's kind of that whole, like, okay, you don't have to go to church, I can make my eggs and bacon and sit there and watch it live stream and, okay, I went to church. But it's that whole, we're missing the whole, like, what it means to come together and be, like, the body of Christ and be in church together.
Yeah.
The priest can't do church if there's no one in there. I mean, he can, he can pray, but it's like, who's he giving communion to? It's just like, it's an empty house. And I think that's a really big thing that, like,
Huge.
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 Just show up and fill the pews and be there and worship.
Going back to relationships in the local community, that's something, all of us have had some sort of fracturing in the work that we do over the last 2 years, right? It's been a bit of a nightmare. But that is a critical, we got to fix that. And if you'll forgive me, Father Chris, I'm going to come to you, but first, Metropolitan Gregory, you have the floor.
For the last 2 years, we have live streamed, we have Zoomed, we have Facebook communities. It's all great. The only technology that's missing is the spoon coming through the screen. And so until we develop that technology, we need to abandon that method unless it's a critical need. Like you're a shut-in and you never go to church because you can't. And the priest delivers the Eucharist to your home on a regular basis. But if you're able to go to church, you need to go to church. Because slippers and breakfast, which after about a month, we saw it decrease so quickly. Who's attending? I don't mean just us, I mean all religious groups that went through that way. 80% of the people that used to go to church that went online disappeared after the first month and never came back. Okay? And so again, until we can develop the technology for the Eucharist to come through the screen, we got to be in church. That's the only place you can get it.
I would, thank you for that comment. I would definitely. Okay.
The hardest thing for the hierarchy, tell them to stay home. Are you kidding me? And yet, we had to do it. The next time we're told to do it, it won't be the same. Trust me. We will be in church. Okay?
I know. I love it. Let's do that. Okay, I am so sorry. Okay, so here's what we're going to do because I'm kind of the worst moderator here. It's going to go Monica, Father Chris, and then, don't tell me, Sal. Yes. Okay, Monica.
I said something that is broken is that we ourselves and the clergy do not put time for our own self-care. So we're so focused
Huge.
We get broken. We get broken, our clergy are broken because they don't have anywhere to go to help themselves.
We are tired and exhausted. I would highly recommend the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Right? There are so many good resources, but that's one. Actually, the pastor that wrote it came from a total place of depletion, and there's some really good strategies in that one, Monica. Father Chris, thank you for being patient with me.
No, I'm just thinking about what is broken. I wrote down the word repair, like you said. The biggest thing I just kept thinking was my own spiritual life. And if I can, because I realize, like, if I can make my spiritual life better, then others will follow that, and that's going to help them be, of course, my path to salvation. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
I think it's so interesting. I was having a conversation with someone. So I have 4 kids. You try and be an involved mom and do this stuff. But there was this moment where I'm sitting at the computer working on like the Parent-Teacher Association stuff, and I'm like working on it. And my daughter, who's 9, was like, "Mom, can you help me with my homework?" And I was like, "Wait, honey, I'm doing this for you." And I just totally, like, the way it came out turned me on my head because I'm shooing away the child in front of me, and I'm doing it for her, for the parent-teacher bazaar, whatever, right, that we're doing. And I think sometimes it's kind of like in our own spiritual life. We're so busy doing good stuff and important stuff, right? We can't belittle the work and the efforts that we put forward, but, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that's a really good one. Okay, Sal, and then I'm going to keep us moving. I'm not looking at anybody else, even though I see your hands, because I know that I'm going to then call on you. Oh, Father Alex, okay, I'll call on you. Okay, Sal.
Even before the pandemic, I guess everyone's attendance, but especially youth
attendance at non-Sunday services?
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. Getting our kids into, non-Sunday services. That's a great one. Okay, yes, Father Alex.
A celebration. I think our celebration is a little broken. How we celebrate the feasts and celebrate the liturgy. I think our kids think church is kind of like that Monty Python movie where they're like, oh, I go. That's what they think going to churches, and it's a celebration in many ways. Of course, this life is given to us for repentance too, but I mean, there's so much celebration. I think that's missing.
We miss the joy in it. I love that. Yes. I mean, I don't love that. I'm sad that that's a reality, but I think you're right. It is a reality. Yes, Father, tell me.
The one I would throw out there is parents.
Parents. Yeah. And we're hearing that. Yeah. Getting parents in.
We're talking about doing youth programming and things like that, but Steve and I were having a conversation, and parents are still a huge influence on their kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our parents have no clue why we do anything in church.
Mm-hmm.
They either came from a communist country where nothing was ever explained because it was just enough to get in and get out before the authorities showed up. They came from the Middle East where maybe their grandparents did the same thing under the Ottomans. Or in Greece, the same thing. Or even in this country. They came into the church maybe from another Christian tradition, and maybe they weren't catechized. And some of that. And so I think there's that part of what we do as youth workers is also work with local clergy or other leaders to figure out how to create programming for parents. What resources can we give to parents?
It's great. It's great. It's great. I second it, I third it, I fourth it, and I agree. Yes. As a parent, I agree, right? Sometimes my kids ask stuff, and I'm like, oh. Okay. So here's what I want to tell you. This is really about self-awareness, which as people who are working in the church, especially with our young people, being self-aware is not just a luxury. It's a necessary skill. We've got to tap into our reality so that we can know what we want to stop, know what we want to start, know what we want to amplify. Especially if we want to create relationships that transform. Okay, you guys are awesome. I'm going to give you a break, but now I want to be kind of pushy. We have a lot of content to get through. I have another hour and 15 minutes. So can we take a 5-minute break and then we'll take a little longer one in a minute? Would that be okay? All right, so let's meet back here I'll give you 8. Let's meet here at 11:20. I'm going to start talking at 11:20, okay? Good work, everybody. Thank you. You're my Barker's beauty. You get your what? Your septum? That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. Share with us.
So just for context, my husband's at a pre-7 church, and we've only moved there since September. And one thing that I've noticed at this parish in particular is that trust is broken. There's a lot of mistrust, a lot of this group thinking that group's never going to listen, that group doesn't care. The other group saying they don't respect us, they're not interested in our perspective. And I think that's key. If we don't address the broken trust from the past, from whatever, it's going to be very hard to build those relationships.
Yeah, but I would tell you that the only thing that can really, not the only thing, but through the Holy Spirit, with lots of prayer and intention, relationships are what will start to build the trust, inevitably. I mean, I believe that. Thank you. Okay, my friend Tanya.
Yes, so at our parish, I see Andrew and I are kind of coming from 2 different standpoints. He's here for camp, and I'm here for supporting. But also I do a lot of youth work in the church. And for years, we don't have the hands and feet of Jesus outside of the parents doing the work. Right? So the parents are constantly, can anybody do this? I'll do it. My daughter's in that, in that activity, and I'm doing it. I shouldn't be the one, I shouldn't say shouldn't, but, if the parents want it for their kids, it's the parents doing the work in our church. And we have these young adults, 20s, 30s, without children, without spouses. They have their job, and they don't want to give their time or their talents. It's very frustrating. So I see that as missing
And broken.
How do we repair that? Because quite frankly, my 14-year-old doesn't want me leading everything, right?
Yep.
I'm tired of the parents in there. So if we really, I don't know,
not going to fix that.
When we're going to have a chance to break out in groups in just a little bit. So let's keep in mind, if anybody has some wisdom to share on how you can actually, hi Father, good to see you, how we can offer maybe some ideas on how to do that. We'll do it at that time. Excellent. Okay. Let's recap for a minute. And if you'll forgive me for belaboring and recapping, but they say that you're supposed to hear things like 21 times before it really sticks. So I'm going to recap again. The first stop on our journey was to identify what? Anybody remember? What's our destination? Where are we going? Right. We said that it was to have youth ministry communities that encouraged and enabled transformational relationships to be built with our youth. Then we defined exactly what transformational relationships are, and we said that they are a connection with our young people that help them experience a marked change from where they are to a different state of being, which we said was to be more like Jesus Christ. Or put another way, we want to inspire their pursuit of holiness. That was step one. Then at our second stop, we did a little reality check, and we identified where we are right now. Okay? And we just talked about things that were working, missing, broken, or confusing in our environments. And now we come to stop 3, which is a really important one. Because if we have identified where we're going and where we are, we also have to know where our kids are. So stop 3, if you look on page 6, you can take notes there. But what is the mental and spiritual and physical reality that our young people are actually in? Like, what are they facing right now? Where are they in their relationships with God, with their parents, with their pastor, with the church or other people? What are their actual stressors? We assume we know, but do we ever really stop and ask, what do you love about your life? What's causing you great pain? And if they actually love engaging in the life of the church, why? And if they don't, why not? We can't assume that we know. After the last 2 years, we have to get in there, and actually Father Nick Belcher used this term, we have to take a temperature check. I like that language, right? We've got to make sure that we're serving the kids that are in front of us, not only the ones that we perceive, right? We think we know what their needs are, but actually, what are the needs they face? I have a friend who's a youth director at a really large Greek parish in Southern California. And she recently got really surprised. She did a survey of a lot of the young people in her parish, and she really thought she knew where their struggles were. And she said they were largely the opposite of what she thought they were. And this is a very engaged youth worker. She knows these kids. And when she shared it with me, it just reminded me that we have to study their reality. Right? And there are so many ways to do this, but let's get specific about a few. So if we really want to know where our young people are, one of the things we can do is study their worldview. Right? This will allow you to accurately identify and incorporate their perspective and their knowledge base. Because somebody said it, none of us see the world exactly the same way. Right? We all have different personalities, we come from different homes, we've had different experiences, and especially now, we've got to account for the fact that we've all been impacted by the last 2 years quite differently. Some people are going through tremendous hardship. Some people are rocking it. Their businesses are booming, they got to hang out with their kids at home for 2 years. Some people got really sick and lost loved ones. Other people were like, I got it, it was not a thing, right? So we have to study and incorporate that. We can't ever assume that our experience is their experience. And I'm going to share a little story with you when I learned this the hard way. So this was a few years ago. Our second son, Alexander, made it really clear during Lent. He was like, I don't know, he was probably like 6 or 7. Yeah, 6 or 7. And he came to me and he's like, Mom, I don't get what the whole big deal is about Jesus rising from the dead. And I was like, okay, well, that's a pretty important conversation, so let's talk about that, Alex. I don't know anyone who's risen from the grave after 3 days of being dead, do you? You want to know what he said? Yeah, they do it on Minecraft all the time. What? He's like, it's called regeneration. Every video game has it. Okay, y'all. I have to tell you, it was really interesting because I didn't even think about the fact that his perspective was so far off from mine. Like, we're not even talking like the human realm. He was in like the virtual realm, and I didn't account for it. But I got to tell you, it changed how we talked to him, right? It was a nice little wake-up call that his perception was completely opposite from what I even fathomed it would be. And the same is true for our young people. We just can't take it for granted because depending on where they go to school, depending on who they spend their time with, which is such a big one, I know we all know this, but who they spend their time with or how engaged their families are, I think it's fair to say that for many of them, the church's worldview is in conflict with almost everything they're hearing, right? And what they even know to be true. So we have to account for that. Even if we don't like it. Even if it's not what we choose, or wait, this is the big one, even if it scares us. Because if we're going to be honest with ourselves, a lot of our young people are really in a lot of pain. We know this. I was reaffirmed yesterday sitting on a plane on a tarmac between Phoenix and Pittsburgh. They're full of anxiety, and in fact, fear and anxiety and overwhelm are what we get. I'm pretty confident I could say many of you deal with this pretty regularly, but those are the big ones that we get all the time. When we get calls, those are the problems people want to help solve, right? We'll dig into that more. But right now the takeaway is that we've got to tap into what our young people are actually feeling and struggling with, or what they're loving and enjoying, before we can try and solve it or replicate it or do more of it. Okay? We have to take a temperature check. All right, another way to make sure that you're serving the actual needs of the kids in front of you and to help you determine where they are is to listen. Kind of piggybacking on what Father Joel said, we have lost the ability to be still and often to listen. But we've got to be intentional. And we've got to really work and be in pursuit to pay attention in a meaningful way, right? So that means we have to put these down. You guys, I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I'm here. I run a business and my life and my kids' activities from this phone all the time. And we all know, we have every meme and gif and thing saying, put it down, but we've got to put it down. We've got to put it down, right? And we have to stop and slow down. It's one of my personal weaknesses, for sure. Like my 9-year-old, who's actually a really shy little girl. She's very much introverted. But when she's at home, man, I mean, I'm impatient. I move fast. Like my pacing's different. And God love her, she'll come up and she'll be like, Mom, you will not believe what happened at school today. Kennedy didn't eat her lunch. Well, she had lunch. It wasn't like she didn't have a lunch. She just didn't eat it because it's pizza. And you know, pizza gets really squishy if you have it from the night before. Anyway, she wanted to go to PE, but she hadn't eaten. And I said, Kennedy, you can't go to lunch and then, you know, not eat it and go to PE. You could faint. Well, I didn't actually say you can't do that because that would have been bossy. But what I said was, and you guys, I'm like, oh my gosh, stop talking. Stop. So much, right? And to me, I'm ready to take a Rolade, but to her, it's like her whole world, right? She had an interaction with Kennedy. Anyway, the point being is listening. I have to be intentional, and that means I have to set this down, and I have to look at her face, and I have to hear, right? So how do we really listen, right? How do we put down this leash and turn off the distractions? Okay, well, one of the ways is to take away some of those distractions. And again, that book that I love has a lot on how to do that. Some of them we just choose to opt out. You don't have to read every feed. Just because someone sends it to you doesn't mean it's important enough to read. If they need you, they will call again, right? Think of all of the feelings you get. Actually, in this the relationship project right here, we have an inventory. Kids actually feel so much worse when they go through social media feeds. Like, they've told us that. We know that definitively. But so do we. I got off Facebook and all social quite some time ago because it makes me worse. I hate everyone. I'm like, ooh, she got fat. Like, it's so bad. Sorry, not nice. But like, I mean, that's what brings out the worst in us, right? It brings out the worst in us. So don't, turn it off. Turn it off. My husband and I, you know, we always laugh about this one story where like he, you know, is supposed to be like this great, like, listening husband, which he is. He's darling. I love him. But there was this one day where I was in the kitchen. I was like, honey, this thing happened and I'm so stressful about it and I don't know what to do about it and you're really good at this. What do you think I should do? And he was like this. Yeah, totally. I think that's what you should do. And I was like, are you did I lose you? Are you? And he said, what? I said, you're not listening, are you? He said, no, I agree. I totally think you should do. I said, well, lead. I said, I don't know what to do, and I'm really bad at this, and you're really good at this. What do you think I should do? And you said, yes, totally. He goes, you're right. I'm not listening. Right? That's it. We've got to be intentional and, have the desire to hear. In James, he says, so then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Let's be intentional about that. Okay, here's another one. You have to make sure that you're being objective and have all the information. And this is particularly tricky right now because there's so much misinformation and crazy, channels of information and stuff coming at us that we've got to just take a second and remember that our perspective of whatever the truth is cannot be the only perspective. And I am obviously not talking about theology. I am not talking about Holy Scripture or the teachings of the church. I'm talking about our perception of a given situation. What do kids want? What is the problem in front of us? Why are they fighting, right? We've got to really inventory what the entire picture is. Here's an example of what that looks like. A couple of years ago, at the time, my 6-year-old son, Jonah, hit his brother Alex, who was 9. And just to give you a kind of background, we handle a lot, we do all the teaching moments and all the things, but physical violence doesn't fly in our house ever, and they know it, okay? So in my best mothering moment, Alex comes running in crying that Jonah, popped him in the face, and I get on my knee and I look right at Jonah and I'm like, why did you do this? Why would you ever think it's okay to hit your brother? Because I know him. He's just like me. He's feisty and passionate and the wild one, right? And I'm right in his face, and you know what he told me? Because you told me to, Mom. It's like, hold up. I told you to hit your brother? He goes, yes, you told me if somebody bullies me and I tell him to stop and I turn the other cheek, but they just won't stop and I'm in danger, I have to put my foot down and stand up for myself. And he was beating me and I told him to stop and he didn't, so I punched him. After the onslaught, I said, that was his truth. I actually did tell him that. My truth was, you're not supposed to fight. His truth was something totally different. And so, as we think about what's going on with our young people, God willing, it's not like somebody punching each other in the face, but we have to really think about why are they behaving, acting, asking, yearning, coming, not coming? Is it what I actually know to be true, or is there something else that I might have missed? All right. Anybody actually know a time when your truth wasn't the truth? In that? Anybody have an example? All right, we'll keep going. Okay, here's another one. And we've touched on this a bunch of times, but it is super important. We have to remember that we are all different, right? We all take in so much information in so many different ways. We're different types of learners. Some of us are very tactile. Some of us are very strategic. Some of us are very operational. Some of us have sensory, differences. Some of us know different things, read different things, right? So we have to account for that. We always say that with my husband, Waleed. We're very different. We're very, very different, but he actually has to stop and think before he speaks. I actually speak to think, right? That's how I process, which you can probably guess I think a lot, right? I'm always talking. So I'll come out and I'll be like, hey, good morning. What's going on? How's the new guy at work? We're going on a field trip today. Everything's good. What do you want for dinner tonight? And he's just like, wow, that's so many words, Michelle, right? It's so different, but we have to account for that because it makes our relationship better, right? Okay, here's another way. It may seem a little bit out of step from the other examples I'm going to give you, but I think it's key. We have to assume the best intentions. Sometimes we get a little bit sloppy on this one. We were writing a book with the Faith Tree team called Removing Barriers, which was focused on how to help our churches be more disability friendly. And one of the driving undercurrents of the whole thing was assumed competence, right? We often assume not the best intentions, or assume that somebody needs help, or assume whatever it is, that somebody's coming from a place that they're actually not coming from, all right? We treat our young people often like we treat persons with disability in the church, with white gloves, okay? You can fill in the blank, but the idea is it's too easy to assume that our young people aren't competent in an area, or that they aren't able to do or hear hard things, or that they don't know what's good for them. But that mindset's dangerous. Let me give you an example of when I did not assume the best. And this is a story that always makes me super uncomfortable because it was so sad, but might as well know all my dirty laundry. So the first time my husband took me to meet his family in Lebanon, I was a new bride. I hadn't met any of them. So we fly overseas, and the person I'm most excited to see is his friend Nabil. And Nabil is literally like his brother from another mother. They grew up across the street. They actually were related to each other, but the same age, born within weeks of each other. And so when you talk about like BFF, they were thick as thieves BFF for years. Okay, so I go to meet Nabil, who had been his friends for, now almost 50 years. Then it was probably 30 years. And Nabil totally creeped me out. Like, it was weird. So every time I talk, Nabil would like lean in and he'd be like looking at my mouth, and I'm like, what is he doing? That's so creepy. And then it got weird. I didn't like it. He was like way too close and way too, and I'm thinking, I've heard about this guy since I married Walid, and I mean, I gotta tell him, I don't want to be alone with him. I think that's weird. So I go to my new husband, I'm a little nervous, and I'm like, honey, I gotta talk to you. And of course, sweet Walid is like, what's the matter? Tell me, Hayati, what? I said, it's Nabil, like, I think he's creepy. He's like, why do you say that? I said, I don't know, Walid. He sits like right next to me. He puts his face right here. He's looking at my mouth. I don't like it. He goes, okay. So Nabil talked to me about that. You talk so fast. Nice, right? You use a lot of American slang, and he has no idea what you're saying. He's trying to read your lips so he can have a relationship with you. I was like, okay, so I'm the jerk, right? So here I was. I made Nabil this like creepy stalker weirdo, and he actually was trying to engage with me because I didn't assume, the best intentions. Thank God that we kind of cleared that up, and I still had 2 weeks in Lebanon because Nabil has gone on to be like a champion of our family, our friends, of our kids. Like, we love Nabil, but I didn't assume the best. So I would just assume that we all pretty much want to pay attention to assuming the best. Okay. Has anyone ever done anything where you didn't assume the best with one of the young people you work with? Like, anyone had like a goth kid come in and you're like, ooh, hardcore, scary, and they end up being like amazing, faithful? Anybody? Come on, give me an example. Yes, Fanas.
Our chancellor's son used to walk around when he was a kid. You know who my dad is, you know who my dad is.
Oh, he did.
And sort of, wanted all the doors open for him. He joined our staff for the first time this summer. And he was the hardest working one out of everybody. He was up first, last to go to bed. He didn't want to be in the cabin. He wanted to be helping out on the support role. And so we said, okay, we'll appease you. He did excellent there, but then we needed him in a cabin for a week, and we're like, oh God, Yanni's going into a cabin. And so we get there, or so he's there, and things are going fine, and then we hear that there's just one kid, 11-year-old kid, having a panic attack. And so we went over, and we're our boys director, etc. And as they get there, Yanni's outside on the porch with this kid, walking through breathing exercises, Jesus prayer. And it was just this really beautiful thing where he was this punk for
so long,
all his life. And he was like this rock star staff member this summer.
That's awesome. That actually is a great example as far as you assume the best of those people that you work with, even on your team, right? Assuming also that we can all grow. Like, none of us are there. We're all sinners, but leaving this space as you assume the best is to assume the best is possible and helping facilitate and bring that out in people. Thank you. That was a great one. Okay. Anybody have questions on our third stop so far? Because we're going to move into the big one. Yes. Yeah, that's a really key one. Actually, that happened to me with a friend of my 12-year-old just last week. There's a call to make sure we have all the information. It will help us understand where people are coming from, right? It's just cultural competence. But it doesn't always change that, like, some behavior is still unacceptable. Still can't do that. But it may allow us to have compassion or to relate or to support in a different way that's super meaningful. That's good. I like it. Okay. This is the fourth stop. I think it is on page 8 in your workbook. And it's the stop that I think is the most urgent for us as young people to think about. It is a critical need in our youth ministry programs. And that stop is called creating a safe space for your young people. Okay, and let's define safe space, because that's a super trendy term right now. Like, I'm not feeling safe right now. Have you guys seen the millennial youth worker, that video? Where this like young girl's like, oh, you have to look it up. It's really funny. So anyway, she's trying to get a job interview, and she's on a job interview, and she says a lot of things like, I don't feel safe right now because you didn't give her the job, whatever. Thank you. That is not what we're talking about. I use the term safe space as it pertains to our youth ministry environments, and I use it referring to creating an environment where every teen or young person feels welcome, feels safe to reflect, where they grow in confidence to share with you or others on your youth ministry team what their struggles or needs are, and where they are growing in their relationship with God, you, their priest, and others. Let's get a little bit more specific. Here are a few components of what I mean when I use the term safe space. Say?
I'm not creepy, I'm just trying to figure out because you're going too fast.
Yes.
Could you slow down?
You got it. I'm going to go through it. When we talk about safe space, I don't even know how to respond, but that's funny. Is your space free from judgment? It is critically important for us as youth workers to set a tone of non-judgment. Teens especially must feel that every question they ask and every opinion they state will be received and not criticized. And listen, a lot of them are going to express opinions that contradict what the church teaches. Others will come with questions that are awkward or seem totally obvious. And that's okay. It's important that we set the precedent that all opinions are welcome as long as they're stated respectfully. Because for us to create environments where our youth truly grow in the faith, we have to create a space where they can wrestle with not only what they believe, but what they're struggling to believe. We have to create spaces where they can sort out their thoughts and feelings, even when they don't exactly exemplify those of the faith. Doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but giving them that space is how they will begin to make the faith their own. If we automatically judge or shut them down, we have not served them well. Number 2, is your youth ministry space relaxed and stress-free? Maybe not always. Like, sometimes there's a time for people to be a little bit more engaged or intense, but our teens and young adults spend most of their time in high-stress environments these days. They often experience stress at school, in their extracurricular activities, and maybe even at home. So keeping your environment light and comfortable is a really valuable tool. We gotta laugh more, y'all. Everything's so serious these days. Levity and joking around is proven to be useful with connection. Expressing interest in their lives outside of the youth group can actually keep the mood relaxed and allow for greater engagement when direct teaching moments actually do occur. Okay, number 3. Do you have clearly articulated expectations around confidentiality? Teens have to know that their time with you or in your environment is safe, and that what they say there will stay there. And it's imperative to emphasize the importance of strict confidentiality amongst, your team, your parents, kids in the youth group. And so that means that you've got to keep the content of what's shared in a space in the space. And that holds true for social media. It holds true for digital communication, emails, and texting. Okay, but on that note, this is number 4, youth ministry space prepared to deal with red flags? Because there are some things that we have to deal with. right? And it goes with confidentiality, because I would offer that you articulate what that looks like from the get-go. And just so you know, we put in the back of your thing, just because it's such an issue. We're getting so much feedback from youth workers across the country. So we put on page 13 and 14 how to handle red flags. It's straight out of the workbook of the Relationship Project. Most of you probably have it, but it kind of gives you guidelines on how to tap into your metropolis or your archdiocese and kind of what their policies are, who to go to for help. It highlights if you ever need help on finding resources for your parish. We have a team of clinicians that worked on this project who are standing by and often utilized, so you can reach out to us. But offering teens a space to share honestly when we invite them to reflect means that we have to be prepared that potentially sensitive information will be shared or observed, especially if it's something that triggered an emotional response. So paying attention is important, and having a plan in case a red flag comes up is also really important. And I just want to say, I know this to be true, but if you are not the head clergy or pastor in your parish, or if you need to loop in people that are accountable in your youth ministry situation, make sure you know what that looks like before you actually get into the situation. Okay, number 5. Can your youth ministry environment handle emotions? Remember, we are human beings, and human beings are emotional creatures. God created us that way. And especially in our teen years, emotions can run high. It's totally normal, if you have young people, that during conversations or time with you, or when things get quiet in a camp, or during, confession night was always a big one when I was camper, right? That emotions may come back. Sometimes, you'll get the tears and you'll get those struggles, right? Those can be appropriate, and they don't always have to cause alarm. However, they should always prompt immediate follow-up. So pay attention. Did somebody close up? Is somebody, who was especially previously very talkative, now silent? Have a follow-up conversation to check in. And again, there's all that red flag information in the back. Okay, number 6. Are you consistent in scheduling? This is one that I think the pandemic really did a number on us. Like, we cancel stuff all the time now, right? And it's beyond just starting and stopping on time, which is an obvious important thing, that you respect their time. And if you say you're starting at 9, you start at 9. And if you say you're ending at 11, you end at 11, right? But in the last 2 years, it hasn't been easy. And we've had a lot of plans canceled. And I think we have to be very mindful. There's a message in that to our young people, because we're not canceling work all the time. And we're not canceling, a lot of other things. And it is doable, right? I don't want to minimize how hard it's been. I live in California. First of all, it's almost illegal to be a Christian in California at this point. But certainly if, the pandemic shut down a place, we were one of them. But there are still ways around it. And so I'm going to give you an example of a phenomenal youth worker who also did a really phenomenal job during the pandemic. Who knows Adela Winder? Yes. So Adela nailed it in the pandemic. And we actually shared this with our audience because we were so impressed with what she did. So Adela is a youth director, or she was a youth director at St. Anthony's in Spring, Texas. And in March of 2020, when everything shut down, even Texas, Adela decided she had to see her kids anyway. She just had to. She wasn't going to let her relationship take a hit. So, I don't know, she made up something, we'll just call it front porch coffee or something like that. And here's what she did. She stuck a folding chair in the trunk of her car. And she called parents and said, "What's your kid's favorite Starbucks drink?" And she drove to every house of the kids that she served with their favorite Starbucks drink and her favorite Starbucks drink and her chair, and she sat it up in their driveway and they sat on their front porch, and she had weekly coffee dates with them so she could stay connected and in relationship with them. That is the business. That is the business right there, because it gave them a safe space to connect when the whole world was turned upside down. And there was a relationship that was transformative because she said, "You're that important." Creating that environment where they trust you and that you will do what you say you're going to do is really important. It's what makes our spaces safe. Okay, here's a good one. Number 7. Do you, your team, or your ministry space set technology boundaries? I don't want to belabor it because we all have different experiences, but I will just tell you, I hate technology. Outside of the fact that I don't know how to turn on most of it, and I'm completely, 20 years behind the time, I think we have to really think through if it does best for us, even in how we relate, right? A lot of us now are on TikTok to meet our kids. Let's go where they are, right? Was that me?
That's
okay.
technology, it's not you.
Oh, it was? Sorry, guys. They're listening. They are listening. That's the other thing. They are listening. I will just tell you, think really, really hard about how technology impacts your youth ministry. And it's possible. I have 2 kids driving. They don't have phones. Right? Not that that's the way for everybody, but it's possible. We've convinced ourselves that the only way to relate to each other is through a device. I would highly encourage you to think through with intention if that's what's best and if it serves your ministry. Okay, the last one, and this is probably the biggest one, but we have to talk about it. Can anyone guess what the biggest killer of safe spaces is in the church these days? Not in the church, maybe let's just say youth ministry. Who wants to take a stab? What do you think it is? Come on, someone take a stab. Yes, Father. Say it again. Politics. Okay, anyone else? Yes.
Mom or dad teaching.
Mom or dad teaching. Okay, anybody else? I'd say it's fear. It is out of hand these days, y'all. On every level. But especially amongst us as leaders. Right? I know we have a lot to be concerned about. I am in it with you. There was a day I was making my kids wear 2 masks to school. Now they wear no masks to school. Like, you do the best you can. You I don't want to get super frozen too, but you take the next best step that you can, right? What's the next best thing? But in doing that, we can get really nervous. And I'd like to propose that we would be well served if we created a framework to deal with those things that overwhelm us. And yes, I'm talking about the virus. And yes, I'm talking about all the things that we've always used as kind of the buzzwords, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And yes, I'm talking about things that we face now, like gender and same-sex attraction and suicidal ideation and self-mutilation. There are a lot of fear-inducing issues. And in society, everything's so extreme that it all feels so huge. But there is middle ground. And there is a way, that we can be in deep relationship with our young people that isn't, go live your truth, baby, whatever it is, or there's no place for you here in the church, you're probably going to go to hell, right? There's a different story that we've got to start thinking through. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about wearing masks or, if kids are struggling to understand the church's teachings on same-sex attraction. Our job as youth leaders is to have a framework to walk through these hard conversations, because we know they're coming if they haven't come already. And they are hard. And they can induce fear, but we have to have them. And I'm going to come clean, okay? I don't have them always very well. I don't know how to talk about a lot of the hard issues. I don't know what the church actually thinks or, has revealed to be true on a lot of the hard issues. There are issues I haven't thought through. And I never want to step outside of the bounds of what we know to be true in the church, right? I don't want to welcome sin into any youth ministry environment that I'm a part of. I want to be really clear when something is outside of the bounds of what the church teaches. But transformative relationships that encourage youth to be like Jesus Christ, that's my passion. And I never do that well when I'm paralyzed by fear. So we've got to do a little pre-work, okay? So let's talk about how we do that. Because we've got to put fear in its place. Okay, we're going to go into some groups for about, what time is it? 10 minutes. But guys, 10 minutes. We have to do 10 minutes, okay? And how do we want to break them up, Natalie? Okay, Father David is going to help us break up.
Close to 50, between 45 and 50 people, so we want to be groups of about 7 to 8.
7 to 8, okay.
So let's try 6 groups. So we're going to do the old-fashioned just count off, except if I could have my directors up here because you're
in there, okay. Great. Before you move, let me just tell you this. I'm going to write a question on the board. Here's what you're tasked to do. Okay? Here's what you're tasked to do for the next 10 minutes. I want you to think through 3 questions. No? Let's cut the 10. I want you to think through 1 question. Okay? How does fear impact the effectiveness of your youth ministry? Some of you may say, actually, it motivates us to be great. There's no judgment on wherever you are. But I want you to think through, how does fear, either that someone's unsafe, someone's going to get hurt, somebody's going to, whatever it is, how does it impact the effectiveness of your ministry? Whoever, we're going to give a moderator for each group, whoever's birthday is closest to today. Okay? So, you have 10 minutes. Yes, questions. When we come back, we're going to discuss it.
Okay, so youth director leaders.
Youth director leaders are with Father David. Everybody else? Here, I'm going to write it here. Is it? Oh, you can't read it?
Yeah, it's really fake now.
Okay, I'm going to do it. All right, let's see. I'm going to try.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so like 6 of us.
I don't know if I'm doing this right. Okay. Here.
1, Father Chris. 2, Aaron. 3, Steve. 4, Bishop Andre. 5, Father Steve. 6 is me. It's my birthday, September 6th. And then the rest of, so you got that? I'll stand on this side, so I have 6. And then we'll just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. This is the top of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sal, you're 1. What do you want to go? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bottom's 1. 1. You're lost already. Back row here. 2, 3. All right. 4, 5, 6,
She told you
7,
what?
8, 9. No. Who did I say 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. 4. Do that. 4, 5.
That's awesome, Panos. Oh, yes, guys. Let's come back at 12:10. 12:10. 12:10.
Number 4.
Number 6. 6.
Tell me.
It's been at least 10 years that you've been, and I've actually been able to like.
I know. Why? You know what I keep thinking? When were we here?
Just listening to you, we are still so like. I love it. Still sisters.
Oh, I love it. I'm so happy that you're joining us. Yeah. Listen.
Always have
Let them.
Part of the reason I started it is so much.
I bought a flip from my son, actually. That's what the only thing I asked for Christmas like 3 years ago, but I couldn't get it anywhere. But I had to get off social. I hate everyone on social. I can't focus on my children. There's always one more thing to look at, right?
Well, I joined Facebook, but only for work. So I use it for my job, I use it for my dad. I do not use it. I've never used it personally.
It's hard. It's hard. And like everyone like Starbucks, why? Kids, they're starting to drive. They have a flip. It doesn't make the center.
our class for this session is how to steward ministry. So I'll just go around each of you and share what you want to share. We start to bring guys at the end. Yeah? I mean, I have two thoughts really. One is the ever-present fear that teens have about opening up in front of other teens to get right. So through that area, which is perennial. The pandemic is not there. I take some care of their care. They're just tired of all that. It's like that parents feel that seems to be the adults. The adults seem to be the ones that are driving people. They're ready to flourish. It feels like the world is so I have two teams right now myself, and I'm actually kind of hopeful this generation is counter-reaction of great creativity.
My name's Khalil.
I would say something that like impacts fear. It's not knowing like if you're giving them the right guidance. They might ask something like really pressing because it's inevitable that they're going to go online and see things on social media, and then you have to and like one thing I've learned is you can always say like, oh, why don't we ask the priest? But then again, it's like they're asking you because they're having, you're in front of them, they're seeing it from you. So it's like giving them like the best knowledge of like that talk to that more for like pressing with that. It's like the right advice, and they're looking to you to help them grow. Oh, I give you a really answer, they're going to walk away and be like, oh, kind of like the big dance when their kids at LIC, but you said blah, blah, blah. So are they going to go away and be like, oh, Leah said X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to believe that now and take that home and yeah, and then, the parent might come to you and say, oh, you taught my kid this? What? Excuse me, like, and it's like, whoa, okay, yeah.
So there's probably layers involved in that scene for the child. There's a figure of like potential I think so even with that fear, there's layers. Yes.
How to, the same thing, I feel like we're getting lessons to discuss the hot topics and how they, how small church sectors and how there's the parents, but when you get into the mechanic environment where it's not sure how kids kind of tell you're all over the country, you're all in some diocese, they all have different worlds, they're different.
So you said
It's not about dealing with these
so in a sense that there might be like a conflict between what you were saying, what parents are saying,
how to go about, that they make it where it's, I think especially if you're not sure it fits their standard and everybody's standards, I think ours are really different.
I think you answered the question correctly. I interpreted the question as how to affect others so you can apply to yourself. Which is probably right. So do that. Does it say Andrew's related to you? Okay, well done.
Father Alex, I understand that as well.
It's kind of the second aspect.
Yeah.
I think focus on both fronts. I think our kids are fear. A lot of our staff specific. A lot of fear from our staff along the lines of such as the church and doing their own thing. They're very zealous for the faith. And fear about that. I had to do a lot of that this summer situation. Whatever inspired. I think like the magic fears is which I think leads to so excited about the faith that sometimes I don't know different answers about different things. Starts to
the church is a good way of saying it, to teach them truth, which ultimately, like the faith is also hard, you know. Like faith is hard. Sometimes I'm not sure how to navigate that. Like faith is hard, and also it's like an exciting thing. It's like it's an awesome thing. So I have a hard time navigating.
Like the tension between what you might be saying about families, but you're going to engage that fraction
But they're not going to see the truth for what it is.
right? A lack of a coherent message.
Amal, youth director for the Anthropian.
Okay, so I created a concept, so it's organized in a teacup. These are like the only thing we have here, so. Okay, yeah. It was FDR.
A lot of fear.
Yeah.
Especially with your kids.
No, FDR, you're right, FDR. And I created all the or yeah. I don't know, that just kind of resonated when the all the ones, like, yeah, they really
I'll have a
hear
couple
just
that
like,
I'll be very energetic.
hear itself. It's like,
Quiet ones
what
that
really comes like
don't say
underneath that,
anything, they
the
just
underlying
sit there and it's hard to get.
I think we have to look at ourselves, like, before we look at like theaters, the first
My fear is like,
what
are
are
they
we
participating?
Like, are we not confident in ourselves?
And not everyone
Do we
has to
not
ask a
have
question or talk.
Because it's more, I think it's more in depth to that, instead of like, okay, I can tell the kids this and X, Y, and Z, but like, are we confident in ourselves, or are we fearing something? Yeah.
And how's that going to project out?
That's how our
That Christian ministry cohort approaches to not directly working with youth right now, but indirectly. I'm listening, so I don't have any thoughts that are in a state of share. So I'm just
You guys have one more minute. Will you tell them, Natalie, there's 1 minute?
I'll be quick. My 1 minute. Are we just overseeing the depth of our youth program? And my fear is that they do all this other stuff, but it's the status quo. And what's going to happen in the months to come when they say, well, you know what, the youth program just doesn't do well. You're doing great at arranging the tables for coffee hour, but the youth program, we're going to pull the plug and go to halftime or forget about the youth program. Sure. Parents just like when the student mentioned here, somebody talking about the example of the girl going and having coffee and just calling out. The parents, I care, I'm a youth guy, so I want to meet with you. I think it's going to be a step that I'm going to reach out to the father. Let me make these phone calls and meet with the parents, let alone meet with the kids. Like, the relationship that the kids have is not kids. And a parish with 400 active families, active. So that's my fear, my concern. I'm glad to be here. I'm taking a lot of notes. Thank you all. I'm going to steal a line from video in terms of years and years. Okay, no, what was that?
That's okay. No, whatever you're comfortable. Wherever you're comfortable. We're almost there. Home stretch. Thank you. We're almost there. Hi. Hi, Nate. What's your last name? Nate Joffrey. Where are you from?
I was going to ask you because I'm in Riverside.
Oh, are you at St. Andrews?
Yeah.
He does so much good stuff. And our friend Keith Bueller just started the school with you guys down there.
Yeah.
He actually taught at my kids' school, and then we lost him. But that's okay. We are in Valencia.
Oh, you're in Valencia?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
But big supporters of the work you guys do down there. Actually, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and Father Josiah's wife had told a mutual friend that they now have 75 youth, young adults in your parish that are. I'm like, why are we not just like studying what's happening there? It's phenomenal.
That one's explosive.
That's amazing.
That's really.
What do you think it is? Is it? Oh, is it really?
Because you have so many moviegoers
Coming in.
people coming in all at the same time.
God bless them. I mean, it's just phenomenal. My kid is super interested in a lot of things, and we've just funneled him over to patristic nectar. We're like, just start there, listen there. Like, stop listening to all these crazies because there's a lot of bad stuff that's not quite as articulate or true to the faith. But Father, it's just good. He's just good. So say hi to Keith and Lindsay Bueller for us. Thank you. I'll see you after. All right, let's bring it back together. Ooh, look at this. Can you hear me better now? I should have been here the whole time. We're missing a group somewhere or two. But come back together. We are in the home stretch, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me. A lot of content. Thank you.
I was thinking maybe for a morning prayer show, like everybody pull out their phone, upload.
Is that terrible? They all want to move it towards a piece where we can all be connected. I'm like, I am antisocial. That is a social application. They're like, Michelle, because where you can all like pray together. I don't know. All right.
My goal is saying, hey, did you pray today?
Yeah. Mine just said it too. Is that so funny? I'm going to announce it here in a second. All right, everyone. Are we ready? Let's do it. We are in the home stretch. Okay. So what did we find out about fear? Who wants to share what your group talked about? Our question was, how does fear impact your ministry? Anybody have thoughts on that? Yes, sir.
I'm Nick from Buffalo.
Hi, Nick from Buffalo.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You know what? Our group had a lot of really cool ideas in how to answer this question, and we went from a couple things like COVID is mainly the parents' fear, but the kids just want to break out.
Yep.
The idea that kids are afraid of not fitting in.
Yep. Ah, that's such a big one. Also, adults.
Adults too, yeah.
Right? Afraid of not fitting in.
One of our adults was saying that the fear of them themselves discussing the hot topics and how do we discuss those topics. So that was kind of cool, looking at ourselves as adults, our fear.
That's good. That's excellent. I actually think that's a really important one. We have to inventory when we're scared, why we're scared, and especially like what are we scared about, right? That's good. Thank you. Yes. Tell me, Leanne. Leanne, right? Leah. Okay.
So our group had the same kind of thing. We fearing you're there for the kid in the situation, like you're saying the right thing when they ask like the pressing topic or whatever. And so just kind of like, it kind of goes back to maybe fearing in yourself that like you're doing the right thing, that you're leading them the right way, that they're not going to go home and say, hey, my youth director told me this and I believe this now, Mom, and maybe that's not like
what the church teaches, right? Or in their home.
It's like, you don't know, like you're crossing boundaries, fearing you're crossing boundaries, because you don't know, like maybe in their home, they don't teach this and that, and they think you're like, oh, I'm just crossing boundaries, but they're safe, they're,
in conflict with yes. Anybody else want to share something? Yes, Sal.
We talked about the fear of taking ownership for
various programs. Sometimes that's because of fear, either of lack of executive action or fear of failure on the youth director's part. We talked about the fear of, we have a bunch of especially college students working with us, having them in that world, because we all know what the world's like, and then having them buy into what the church teaches, and then sending them to high schoolers, and then hoping that the high schoolers are like, well, the church teaches this, but you know what, my professor said, something like that.
Exactly.
You're getting out of your kind of, and this affects the kids and everyone, the fear of getting out of your niche group, meeting new people, if you're a young person, meet the oldest person in your church, meet new people. Kind of the fear of being out of our cliques at no matter what age. And then what we teach the kids, they come into church and we teach them about what all get them. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they all want to talk about sex. And I'm tired of it, quite frankly. I'd like to talk about the numinous experience they can have in liturgy. Because I know it's important to what the church teaches about these things. And I want to give them the Orthodox position. But you know what? I have an hour, maybe an hour and a half a week with you. So let me tell you about the life of St. Anne. Let me tell you about this. Here's the boogeyman. Sorry.
Yeah. I have to tell you, that's where relationships are so key, right? Because one, we're never going to have enough time. Two, we have to have, we are handing down the faith. We have been called to hand down the faith, essentially, right? That means we have to be in pursuit of it and know it ourselves, and still have to deal with all the scary things and talk about all the scary things like you just mentioned. I will, and forgive me because I'm going to cut us a tiny bit short on this conversation because I want to honor what I've promised Natalie and the team. But I will tell you, the takeaway for me is that we've got to put fear in its place. Whatever it is we're scared of, whatever it is the people we serve are scared of, we've got to think through and have a methodical way of addressing what can be a really overriding issue in a lot of different parts of our ministry, right? And, we don't want to swim with sharks. Like, we have to be discerning. There's no point in setting ourselves up to fail by saying, well, I'm scared of nothing. But we have to have a plan, if you will, on how we're going to deal with the fear and what we're going to do when those things arise. Let me just give you the last step that I have here. We have said, to recap, that creating a safe space for young people is, number one, it's judgment-free. Number two, it's relaxed and stress-free. Number three, we have clearly articulated confidentiality expectations. Number four, we're prepared to deal with red flags. Number five, we know how to deal with emotions when they arise. Number six, we are consistent in our scheduling. Number seven, we have technology boundaries. Number eight, we have a framework for handling fear. And number nine, our environments have to be steeped in prayer. Remember, we said that we wanted our young people to be praying more because we wanted them to be more like Jesus, and he was a praying man. Well, we've got to start talking about and teaching them how to do that. Creating intentional times to pray together and teaching our young people how to pray regularly on their own and to pray as a group, and holding each other accountable to that. These are great ways to connect them to God and each other. And if you will allow me to put in a shameless plug while we're here, just this week we launched an app to try and help parishes do that. It is called The Encounter. It is born out of an effort that came out of the Antiochian Archdiocese in the 80s called the Common Prayer Discipline of the Fellowship of St. Philip the Evangelist. We called it The Encounter because that was too many words. And essentially, you have morning, noonday, and evening prayers. Your phone will pop up and say, take a minute to encounter the living God. It has a library and a bank of other prayers for specific, like my cousin just had a baby, and they read the prayers before mother gives birth to a child before they went into the hospital. Like, it has a whole library of stuff for you. So that came out this week. I don't understand all the QR codes in that, but I think if you zap your phone on one of those pictures, it's supposed to help you. And so it's available for all of your devices. You are welcome to ask me questions about it after, but just know that the takeaway is that we've got to not only teach our kids how to pray, but help facilitate the regular and disciplined growth in their daily personal prayer. Because that will lead them back into corporate prayer, right? Okay.
If you don't have it on your phone yet, I suggest you do it today.
Do it.
3 times. It's already talking to me 3 times.
Saying, make sure you're praying.
Morning prayers, afternoon prayers, and some other thing that came through that I haven't looked at.
Oh, you have? Okay. I will.
Very nice.
It also, we have readers from the church, from Pan-Orthodox churches across the U.S. who read them. So if you want to hear them read to you, you can push that button. And there's music that it's going to be continually growing, but it's a fun resource. Okay. So in our last chunk of time, I want to talk a little bit about some strategies, because I am all about strategies, and that's where the rubber meets the road. So I want to give you just quickly 3 tools, and in 7 minutes I probably won't be able to go through all of them as long as I had hoped, but there are a million ways to get tactical and to implement things that will impact our youth ministry programs. But these 3 tools I have really appreciated in the last year in my own ministry, so I'm going to share them with you. The first tool is to inventory your own approach. And we're not going to do it now, but there's 2 questions that you can ask yourself or ask members of your team to kind of go over with you. And that is, are you doing the right things? And the second one is, are you doing things right? Because sometimes we can get caught up in the whirlwind and just kind of get swept away and drift towards something that's actually not building transformational relationships with our young people. So take a second and think through, are we doing the right things to actually cultivate the relationships that we're hoping to cultivate with our youth? And then ask yourself a secondary question is, are we doing things in the right way? Is there anything that we change? Okay? I will wrap myself out. At Faith Tree, and I'm the first to say this. I said this to Steve last night. I'm a B- leader at best. Like, not being self-degrading. There are parts of leadership that I really don't like. I want to be buddies with everyone, and then that's all. I don't want to have to do the work part. But I have to be really aware that that's impacting parts of my own ministry. So if you were to ask me, are we doing the right things? I would say yes. Are we doing them right? I'd say we have some work to do. I don't hand things off very well. I don't delegate very well or equip or enable members of my team. And so I have to have a plan to work on that if I want to take and steward what God has entrusted to me through this work. And so I think really doing some self-reflection and being self-aware, and even enlisting people that you trust to say, hey, are we doing the right things and are we doing them right, is a useful tool. Okay, this is where I want to spend the bulk of our next 5 minutes together. This is the second tool that has changed my life profoundly. I will share a story with you about a significant experience I had, and it's really shaped a lot of how I do ministry. So how many people know Father Michael Nasser? Everybody know Father Michael Nasser? So we grew up in Southern California. He is way older than me, so make sure you tell him I said that. So are you the same age? So if you talk to him, tell him I said I'm way younger. But anyhow, when I moved to Boston, I did college and grad school in Boston, and he was at Holy Cross for part of that time. And one day he called me, I think he was a seminarian at the time, and he basically said, hey, listen, I'm coming to have dinner at your dining hall. What day do you want me to come? I was like, great, come. So I was psyched for the company. He came, he sat down, and we ate, and he said to me, so you are in the theater, you're an acting student, right? I said, yes, I am, because I was. He said, okay, so have you pre-decided what you'll do and not do? And I was like, I don't really actually know what you mean. He said, well, you have to pre-decide. So he whips out a piece of paper and a pen, and he says, there's bound to be stuff that you're asked to do on stage that is in direct conflict with your Christian life. So how are you going to handle it? And if you wait until the opportunity presents itself, you're probably going to be a little bit too late, or at a minimum, it's going to be a much harder decision. So let's just go ahead and pre-decide now. And then he started asking me all these really hard questions. So he said, so would you take your clothes off on stage? I said, absolutely not. I would never do that. Great, let's put it down. He said, would you ever play a murderer? I said, I don't think so. He goes, great, so Lady Macbeth is out? I was like, oh, okay. And then we went through question after question after question, and we pre-decided what it was before the stakes were high. Systematically went through a zillion scenarios and wrote down what the best case would look like before I ever had to make any hard choices. And guess what? The day came when I did have to make hard choices. They did. But because I had pre-decided, it was a lot easier decision for me to make. So I want us to do that too. We were going to do that in groups. I'm actually not even going to have you break out and do it on your own. But I want you to answer this question for me, first. Because listen, it's going to come where you have decisions to make that you know are coming. So let's see what we can take off our plate and not decide in the moment. And that could be something as simple as we need to have this COVID protocol that our priest blesses and parents are comfortable with. It could be something as entailed as if a young person comes to us and says they're thinking of taking their own life, which we know from you, and for the 64 people who've approached our organization, that's a scenario that happens. Let's pre-decide what the chain of events looks like before it happens, okay? So the first thing I'll say is, what things in your youth ministry environment could you pre-decide? Let's just shoot out a couple. I just gave you two. COVID protocols, and an action plan if somebody, expresses self-harm. Anything else? Yes?
When I was at the church in Rosedale, we would set up in the year with all the students a code of conduct.
Code of conduct. I love that. Great. Pre-decide the code of conduct. Even if it's about how we handle technology, right?
With the kids.
Yeah. Have everybody and the kids have a say in that. And pre-decide, this is what we're going to do with our phones, or this is how we're going to talk to each other, or this is how we'll show respect. I love it. Anybody else? Okay, I'll keep us moving. The second question is, what things can't be pre-decided in a youth ministry environment? Is there anything that we can't think through before it happens? Do we just have to go off the fly? Yes, Leah.
Like topics that could bring you that are very depressing, like something like suicidal. You don't know what's going to happen. Like in the moment, they might chase me between and just like, whoa, what do I do? You kind of go into like fight or flight mode.
Yeah. That's every day of my life, by the way. With 3 teenagers, almost 4, I'm always like, oh, Lord, give me strength. But is there anything that we can do in anticipating that we could do a little bit of pre-decision?
I think we could, have a way of not going into the panic fight or flight mode. Like I have a system like where it's always like another staff member that you can just call on that moment or text and say, hey, here's my situation. Are you, can you come in and hang out with the kids while I step outside with this kid and talk with them or whatnot? Yeah.
Great. Yes, Father Joel.
You could have a list of resources yourself.
Excellent. We have several resources and all free resources on our website, lists of mental health professionals and places to go if you have a dire need. We have how to deal with anxiety. We have a bunch of things that you are able to tap into, and there are lots of organizations that also have that, like, what's the game plan when it gets really dishy? Last question. Have anybody already pre-decided anything that's working in your ministry that you could share? Yes?
Well, for some topics, our protocol is just to bring a priest in right away, as opposed to telling the kids to approach a priest. We usually have a set knowledge of certain topics that we're allowed to advise on, and then anything more, or just asking questions from there. That's when we have to bring energy in.
Is that something that you talk about as a team? Is it written somewhere? How do you guys communicate that?
Loosely structured, if you will, but we have a shared drive that we have all that written down and what priest to call for what situation.
That's great. That's great. That's really good.
Relationship experience. Other priests are more familiar with like transgender and like kids who are going through those processes or thinking about it, I should say. So we have different priests aligned out for different topics.
Excellent. That's really great. All right, I'm going to just move into the last one really quickly. It seems kind of elementary, but it really has changed a lot about my life, and specifically when we're talking about self-care for ourselves as people in ministry, it has been a game changer for me. And it's nothing, magic pixie dust. There's no special sauce, but it is a different way of thinking about my calendar that has been extraordinarily helpful for me. So I want to share it with you. It is a take on a version of something by a gal named Brooke Castillo, who is, a life coach or something online. She has a podcast or what have you. But she calls it Monday Hour 1. I have tweaked it for myself. I call it Dominate Your Week, and that is because I know that so many of us feel we are at the mercy of time, of other people, of unexpected events, especially our clergy. My heart is for our clergy because they are tasked with being everything to everyone. Fundraiser, and the architect, and the therapist, and the conflict resolution person, and the sacramental leader, and all of it, right? So I don't really want to be at the mercy of my calendar all the time, but I still have to account for a lot of unexpected, and time is not a renewable resource. So this is something that has helped me plan my weeks. So Brooke Castillo talks about Monday Hour 1. She says the first hour of Monday. I do it Sunday night because the craziness has already started before Monday comes for my week. And here's what she does. You pick 1 hour a week, and you literally do the brain dump. And the sheet that you will see in your workbook, I don't know what page it is. Someone tell me what page it is. 12? Okay. So I put down some topics for you because those help me think about all the things. But you literally take 10 minutes and you dump all the things you have to do. And then you do it again. I know. Being so feisty with me. You do it just like we did with the 4 questions. If you think of it, then you take another minute and you think more and you think more. Stuff will always come from the depths, right? And you keep emptying and emptying. So nothing is left in your mind that you have to accomplish for a given week. And then it comes to plotting, right? So if you need to buy a gift, or if you have a meeting with your priest, or if you're going to go meet with a kid, or your own kid has a recital, or you're going grocery shopping, or getting a manicure, or you just want to read a book, or have date night, whatever it is, you write it all down. And then start by seeing what you can eliminate. Do we really have to do all the things that are on that list? I spend a lot of time doing things I really don't have to do. So you decide that. The second is you see what you can delegate. Again, I'm really bad about delegating, but there are people to be found to work, even volunteers or parents, or there's always situations like Tanya described where it's hard to find people that are engaged, but you can offload some stuff. So you choose what you're going to do with that. The third step from there is to decide what you can double up. So can you do laundry and order the book on Amazon at the same time? And you get all that done, right? And the idea going through this as you plot them on your calendar. I use Google Calendar now. I've always been a very analog person, but it allows me to move things around. But the idea is to intentionally look at what you've laid out as the plan for the week. Are those the things that are going to help you build transformational relationships with the youth that you serve, or for the people in your house, your husband, your kids? Are those the ways that you want to spend the minutes of your day? Because again, it's finite. And here is the really tricky part. Now you guys are going to laugh at me. I've had more than one priest laugh at me when I say this. After you get it all done, you make sure you're doing what you want to do, you're not doing what you don't want to do, somebody else is doing the things you don't have to do, you've scheduled it. You cannot deviate at all. Not once. And unexpected things will pop up, but you honor that schedule as much as possible. Why? Because when Monday Hour 1 or the Sunday, evening Dominate Your Week comes, you will plan differently. You will know, I didn't leave enough time for self-care. I didn't actually get to meet with my kids. I need to schedule more time for meeting with the people that I'm serving. I've got to check in with my hierarch or the pastor that I answer to, because this fell through the cracks this week. But by honoring what you say you're going to do, it's integrity for us, for ourselves, and it also allows us to evaluate, are we intentionally going where we want to go, or are we drifting? Okay, here's what I want to leave you with. First of all, you guys are awesome. You're such a fun group to talk with, so thank you. I know it is wild out there, but we actually have incredible influence, and we've been given a gift to serve the young people in our communities in ways that not many people have been invited to do so. And we don't get to realize it maybe now, sometimes our impact shows up years down the road. But if we can show up with intention and really create environments that are safe and allow us to build relationships that are transformational, we've given our kids a gift, but we've given ourselves one as well, right? And I can't really think of anything that I would be more passionate about than doing that. So do you all have any questions for me? Anything? Okay, then I would just encourage you, as this week goes on the last page of that packet that you have, Share resources with each other. There are so many good resources out there, right? Write them down. The ones that I wrote that we got here today was the David Attenborough YouTube video about God and termites, I think, is what we said. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. There's another one that I use. Who's heard of Calendly? Calendly changed my life. So I used to always have everybody just getting on my schedule whenever. Calendly is a really good way. You determine when you are available to have meetings. You send somebody a link, and if they want to meet with you, they pick the time that works for them based on your calendar. It's a really good tool. Anything else? Thank you all. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you. That's good. Yeah.